Welcome to the Let's Talk Data podcast series presented by SAP, where we explore game-changing technology and strategies with leading experts with the goal of maximizing the value of data across your organization. If you haven't done so already, please follow or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite channel to stay tuned in.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our SAP Let's Talk Data podcast. Is it data product or data as a product? My name is Corrie Birkeness. I'm from SAP Product and Solution Marketing, and I'm going to be your host for today's podcast. So let me kick it off by starting off introducing our SAP speakers. We have Gebhard Roos. He's a product manager for SAP Datasphere, Data Marketplace. We have Maria Villar. She's the head of North America Data Strategy and Transformation. And then Tina Rosario, Chief Data Officer for SAP Europe. So let's go ahead and get right into it and kick off with a question at hand, really. Maria, is it data product or data as a product?
Hi, Corey. Yeah, thanks for inviting me in this panel. I know it's going to be a great one. This is one of those topics that's everybody's talking about. And I think that these terms are used interchangeably, and they should not. So the way I look at it is that data as a product is an operational model. It's an operating principle, and it includes more than just a data product. So data products are the result of a data as a product operating model. And the superset, which is that operating model, includes things like what are the processes for data products? What are the governance techniques? What's the organizational design? What are the roles and responsibilities? So clearly, to me, it's really the overall arching way that you think about how you want to deliver value to your customers with data.
That makes sense. So Tina, kind of going off of that, let's dive a little bit more into the characteristics that make a data set a data product, and why these characteristics are important.
Yeah, and I thanks again for having me. And I completely agree with what Maria said. I think about when managing data products, there are a few different characteristics that help make those products meaningful. The definition of the product and its application and usage, the objectives it's intended to deliver, the governance constraints, security, privacy, compliance, accountability with a clearly defined owner for the data product, and then the asset inventories of where the products are maintained and developed within the ecosystem. And these, to me, need to be transparent to the consumers. They need to be easily understood by all the products. And to me, the key is regarding use cases. So understanding where the products deliver value, as that will showcase, what the expectations are. For example, are they intended to deliver output, to need to build an AI model, or are they to deliver business outcomes, such as dashboards that help run the business? The focus to me is around these use cases, and I'll share a personal example. So in my life, I check ingredients on skincare labels as per my dermatologist. I've got to look for ingredients that can irritate my sensitive skin. And sometimes I can understand them, but other times they're in scientific terms that just stump me. And I have to look back on my doctor's notes. So not an easy experience. But with food cases, like buying the chocolate spread that my daughter craves, I can easily steer away from products that are made with palm oil and move to other options that are supposedly healthier. But at least I can feel better about my decision because the labels have made it helpful and easier for me to know what to buy. And I think it's the same with data products, is that we needs to be apparent to the data consumer, and the best products are designed with end users in mind.
That makes sense. And Maria also mentioned organizational and process components of data products. What are some of the strategies or different operating models to support creation of these data products?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that maximize the value of data products is that they need to be shared. and in an open framework that encourages consumers to access data that's meaningful to them. And a collaborative approach to data products has really been proven to deliver more value as products move up the value chain from single foundational usage to multiple data products that are driving insights and decisions that have higher value points. The different approaches have been discussed over the years with trendy terms like data mesh, data fabric, data democratization, and data centralization. And I think what's happening is that organizations want to better manage data products and ensure that they can be reused and can support the business as usual, but also the intricacies now of data science, advanced analytics, and AI. So it's been a bit more complicated as data has finally earned its place at the heart of growth and innovation. I think democratization of data is a really effective way to enable consumers to answer their own questions via self-service, right? There's a bit of empowerment there. But on the flip side, this requires full transparency of the data quality and a certain level of data fluency so that the consumers understand the products that are available to them. And at the same time, it also requires, kind of on the technical side, security and access control with consideration to the sources of the data, right? Is it data that can and should be consumed per contractual obligations? So in the end, there needs to be alignment between technical capabilities and business capabilities. And this is, to me, where tools like a semantic layer can be useful because it supports the business capabilities, the consistent definitions, the classifications, the business context that helps users to understand the data products and find the ones they need. But it can also manage the technical side of things like access control, security, compliance. So the semantic layer can kind of serve as the bridge between the business and the IT that has content relevant to all. And it can also enable usage and reusage of the data across multiple business needs somewhat seamlessly.
All right. I love this. Gebhard or Maria, anything to add kind of on the general topic of data products?
Absolutely. I think that I've been working a lot in the area of commercial data that is offered by commercial data provider. And I think they have a good record track in really establishing all the qualities that Tina has mentioned, right? So make a data product understandable, be really spot on in the use case, make sure that there is clear ownership and responsibility on the data quality of that product and also in evolving that product along the evolvement of the use cases, because also use cases are not necessarily always static and stable. And I feel that these qualities that particularly large data provider have developed over the last 4 or 5 decades even from the pre-digital age is something that we are kind of asked to introduce into our culture of a data product minded organization. So, and I completely agree to Maria that it's not about just declaring a data set as a data product, right? It's about the overall culture that we put around it to make it something that really fosters data democratization and self-serve and the more flexible and agile use of data.
Yeah, what I want to add to what Gebhard was saying is that I think it's also important to talk about what is not a data product. Just like we're talking about data as a product, you start off with data assets, and those have been the traditional classic assets that we all know and love. But not all data products. Certainly, all data products are data assets, but not all data assets are data products. And I think that's one differentiation that we need to clearly keep in mind. A data product has all of those criterias that Tina is talking about. I'm also a member of the Enterprise Data Management Council, and they're doing a whole working group on data product, and they are going to be releasing a framework that has definitions and criteria, and that's going to be super, super helpful. And one of the things that they talk about is, well, if we have so broad a definition of data products, everything could be a data product, frankly. But one thing that's pretty clear is that a physical product is not a data product. So we can't actually say a Tesla car that has software is a data product. And maybe that's something that's debatable, but clearly, the stake that we're putting in the council definition is that physical products like a car that has software is not a data product. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to sort of add that to the conversation to say, we also don't want to throw everything in the kitchen sink in terms of that data product definition, that there are some things that data products are not.
Yeah, I completely agree, Maria, because that just adds another layer of complexity. And I think it's one of the reasons why some data leaders have struggled with how to implement data-driven products within their organizations is because of this extra complexity and the lack of clarity of definition.
And there's an interesting aspect in this distinction between an asset and a data product, or basically an asset that is shared and a data product. So we make a distinction in a journey from an asset to a curated asset to a data product, right? And I think for an organization, it should be very important to have a clear perspective what makes the difference. And to me, one of the core differences is basically between even a curated asset and a data product is that the data product has this clear ownership, ideally even a service level associated with that, which is not necessarily something that a curated asset that exposes data, which is somehow accessible, necessarily has. And that's why I feel that really establishing that culture of being clear what a data product is ultimately is one of the keys to success.
And Gebhard, so on the topic of kind of accessibility sharing, we know that sharing is caring. So what about data marketplaces? What are they in relation to data products, and how do they bring value to an organization?
Yeah, first of all, of course, a data marketplace is what a marketplace is in general. I mean, that's the place where someone looking for someone and something and someone offering something can meet, right? So that's particularly the place where users, consumers, however you want to call them, that are searching for data being suitable for their use case can start their discovery journey to find data that is suitable for what they have in mind, right? So, I mean, that's basically the place where you can find data without already knowing what exactly it is, where it comes from, and where to get it, right? And I think particularly in complex organizations, that's a very central thing to make sure that data is consumable in a self-service fashion, because if you cannot find it, you cannot use it, right? So I think that's one of the very central functions of data marketplaces. And as you might notice, I personally don't make a real distinction between a company internal data marketplace or a public data marketplace or any kind of private data marketplace, because I feel that this is a very central function which is necessary to really drive data exchange without even exactly knowing your direct audience, and on the other hand, to really offer data products that are used in a broader way. Then, of course, there is the other notion, and that is also something that shouldn't be neglected. That can also be the place where data is being monetized. That could also be the case in an internal data marketplace. So it could be the place where it's negotiated whether the data is basically worth the price that I want to pay. That ultimately could be money, direct monetization. It could be indirect monetization. I've seen a couple of use cases where really the data marketplace has kind of a sharing is caring approach, where you get data for the price of also sharing your data. I've seen many benchmark data providers which exactly do that, which basically offer benchmark data if you also contribute into building these benchmarks. So all of these functionality is something that data marketplace can provide to data.
So how about sharing outside of an organization? Can you just talk a little bit more about what some of the different models are for external data sharing or data sharing communities?
Yeah, in general, in the models for external data sharing that we've seen in the market is there's that notion of public domain data, which is absolutely worth mentioning, because there are use cases for public domain data even in commercial organizations, right? So, for example, investor relations data is not necessarily just a piece of paper anymore, or just a note on the website. In many cases, it makes sense to really treat it as a data asset that you want to share, and you don't necessarily want to sell it, for example. So, but of course, also state agency or public organizations have a big culture of sharing public data. I mean, this is the one of the models that you have. So, free of charge data, sharing it publicly. Simply, you want to make that data available for people that interact with you without any direct commercial interest. Of course, on the other hand, there's this regular model of commercial data sharing. So you really treat the data as a product in the initial meaning, right? So you create that product to earn money with that data, which is something that is very common, of course, among all those commercial data providers that we know. And it's something that I've seen also organizations thriving for that have not necessarily the background of a company creating data. And it turned out that it can be very difficult to establish something like this in an organization, because the culture of, let's say, producing cars and selling data that's generated out of a cars is a very different thing, right? So it really requires to take it as a serious element of your business if you want to have that as a commercial model. What is probably even more frequent is a model of indirect monetization. So it is exchanging data to make sure that this data exchange, or on the basis of this data exchange, creating business value that materializes not in a direct revenue stream, but usually in some kind of mutual efficiency gain, right? So, and a good example is almost all retailers in the world share sellout data with their suppliers, right? And why do they do it? Because if the supplier understands what the retailer sells, he can better refill shelves. He can better understand where a product works and where not. He can support the retailer in processes like category management or other processes, which ultimately is to the benefit of both of them. So I think this indirect monetization is a very, very strong momentum for exchanging data on marketplaces. And then what I also found is, and by the way, maybe, and this is very often kind of also the commonality on marketplaces that if it's not kind of a one-to-many or a direct relationship, that this is groups meeting that in a total, really, in this sharing community, see indirect monetary value on exchanging data. And then there's also something that I think it's very, very interesting that we should not neglect, is that data product or data exchange in general already happened since quite a while. And that is as a bidirectional exchange. You take some data, you send it to someone who enriches the data, who does some magic with the data, who does some science with the data, and you get back the result. And for many of those processes, you need a relatively close integration with your service partner to do that magic. And this is also a data exchange that I have seen happening on marketplaces as well. So there is multiple different use cases on marketplaces around data sharing, which can, in a summary, which can be considered as public data sharing for kind of monetization, indirect monetization, or free of charge. There is this kind of more or less private data sharing, and then we have these internal data marketplaces where organizations want to make sure that their data is broader used than that's traditionally done.
So to kind of wrap up our conversation here, Maria, what are some of the organizational and technical challenges to creating data products or data marketplaces?
So the first thing you have to do is you want to really expand the network of people that participate in data products, right? One of the reasons we do data products is because we want to increase the scale and we want to increase the accountability. That means you have to start off by doing a lot of education of, well, what is a data product? Why is it a new operating model? What are the roles and responsibilities? So first, just getting the business educated and buying into that concept is one of the challenges that I hear a lot of. Most CDOs or heads of data who are going down this path, and by the way, it's a very predominant path. Almost every CDO, CDAO that I know is piloting with data products, if not having 1 or 2 years already creating data products. But the first step they had to take was deciding how to communicate and get the buy-in and maybe get the funding that they needed. They don't start off the conversation by saying, hey, today we want to do data products. That's not the problem they're solving. The problem they're solving is that one of two things. They either want to increase the scale and the speed in which they're delivering to the business. So they don't talk about it in terms of data products. They talk about it as a way in which we are going to improve the scale and the output of the data team, so we are not the critical path. So really finding that right first way that you have to communicate the buy-in, and then organizationally, what are the roles and responsibilities around this new operating model? And there are new roles. There are data product roles. There are other roles, in the marketplace as well. And then really then the third thing is just what is the right technical and architectural model that you have? Is it a data mesh, right? Or is it a data fabric? Or is it some combination of some of these new architectural terms that we are deciding on? And then where do you get started? I mean, what are the use cases? What are the data product domains? Some companies go off and identify all that up front. Other companies do early pilots and then decide what the next step is. So really all of that, Corrie, has to be thought through. And these are all can be obstacles to success that has to be really thought through in the right way with your stakeholders and your team of what's going to work best in your organization.
And Tina, Gebhard, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, on the organizational change management challenges, in terms of data product creation and management, I think those are, to me, the most difficult and the most important. The sense of, understanding who owns that data product, who's accountable for how that data product is to be consumed, should be shared, should be accessed. To me, I think that's an important consideration.
And maybe I absolutely can echo that organizational dimension, and maybe I can add something. And so my experience is that traditionally IT organizations tend to optimize what they do to minimize their workload and increase their efficiency, which is not always necessarily to the benefit of kind of the receiver of that output. If it comes to data products, I think also in this aspect that requires a certain mind shift, right? Because if it really should have data qualities or data product qualities, it has to be something that is created, designed, and maintained with a really strong focus on the recipient, because a data product ultimately would be benchmarked by the success of consumption. And that probably requires usually a mind shift change from being efficiency centric to rather being consumption centric, to understand what is really needed to be spot on for the use case and the consumer. And that's for many organizations that also means a mindset shift.
Yeah, I think, as I said, the best products are designed with the end user in mind. Yes. But that means that those people that are designing the products need to know who those consumers are, right? And need to know what their expectations are, need to know what their use cases, what the applications of those products intend to be. And oftentimes it's more than one, right? It's not just one area of the business, or not just one use case, and not just one data product that's required, but it's multiple data products that together are going to add the significant amount of value. And so it's all of those different considerations that need to be thought through as a part of the design, even before you get to the implementation stage.
I would just add that I would be a little more controversial to say, if the data product doesn't put the consumer in the middle, then it's not a data product. Then it's just a data asset. That's the whole fundamental shift, is that you are putting that consumer in the middle, and you're making it as easy and shareable and transparent and trustworthy. And by the way, we haven't even gotten to that question of trustworthiness, right? Yeah. That could be another whole podcast, Corrie, just on how to instill trust with the marketplace, by the way.
Exactly, especially external marketplaces, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But also, I mean, that applies equally to both types of marketplaces, because if you look at large enterprises, different elements or different domains of that enterprise can be pretty far away from each other, right? So they are probably sometimes even as far away as an external data provider. You don't know them and still don't want to consume their data. So that trustworthiness is important in both cases, I would say. Plus, of course, that's also something to dedicate effort and thoughts to how I make my product attractive for someone who wants to use it. I think that's a general thing to make a data marketplace attractive as a place that is worth to go through, that is worth to discover, that's worth to look for data, not just a place where I automatically expose something that I have collected and generated. I think that's to what Maria says, this aspect of curating a product in a way that it is really attractive to the consumers and used and liked by the consumers and the users is an aspect that cannot be overrated, I think.
Mm-hmm. And transparency too as well, right? It's got to be, you don't necessarily need to be a data expert to be able to access the data from the marketplace, right? You want it to be very transparent as to, here are the products that are available to you, here's how we would recommend they should be used. And here are the applicable use cases as an idea, and then let them have empowerment and self-service to be able to access and pull together. And to me, there's a lot of value in this collaboration across different data products, and it just requires some transparency and some confidence.
Wow, Tina, that you just opened up another whole topic, which is that of transparency, because Corrie and Gebhard knows as well. That's one of the differentiators in a marketplace application, is that it's going to provide the producer all the equivalent analytics that they need. Mm-hmm. So the marketplace has to be also tracking usage, right, and popularity and compliance, and it's all of these added features that then makes the marketplace that vehicle for even extending into and really teaching producers what is important and what's popular, as well as giving the consumer what they need.
For sure. It's just marketing 101, right? I mean, the term marketplace, to me, don't forget the marketing element of the marketplace. So it's not just serving up data products to a consumer, but it's actually ensuring that they're used and that they're useful and that they're tracked and that they're extended upon, and all the key, the P's of the marketing 101 that we learned in graduate school, I think, apply here.
Well, I feel a part 2 coming on. I'd encourage everyone listening to, add to the comments on what more you'd like to learn around data products. I think we touched on a couple of parts that we definitely could expand on. So thank you, Gebhard, Maria, Tina, for sharing your thoughts and especially your experiences. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening to our SAP Let's Talk Data podcast, where we were discussing, is it data product or data as a product? And then I'd encourage everyone listening to also look at the additional resources. Those are in the comments or the notes of the podcast. There's various links that can point you to the SAP Datasphere data marketplace, SAP's business network, as well as our data exchange. So those are available in the description. And again, I encourage your comments, and please subscribe to the series to stay tuned for new episodes, as well as get caught up on those you might have missed. So thanks again, everyone, and be well.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Check out the show notes for additional links to information. And please subscribe or follow to join us on the next episode of Let's Talk Data presented by SAP.